In January 2007, research in motion dominated the smartphone industry. Its BlackBerry devices were carried by presidents, CEOs, and 20 million subscribers worldwide. By 2016, its market share had fallen below 0.1%. The company that defined mobile email was effectively dead. The cause wasn't gradual obsolescence. It was one decision, made in a single moment, that set everything in motion. To understand the decision, you need to see what BlackBerry was before it. By 2009, RCM held 43% of the US smartphone market. It wasn't just popular, it was essential infrastructure. The device had become so addictive that users nicknamed it the Crackberry. Wall Street, Washington, and every Fortune 500 company ran on BlackBerry's secure email network. RIM's competitive moat was engineering deep. Its proprietary network compressed data so efficiently that emails arrived in seconds, even on slow networks. Its physical keyboard allowed one-handed typing, and its security architecture was trusted by governments. Co-CEOs Mike Lazaridis and Jim Balsillie had built a company valued at over $70 billion by solving one problem better than anyone: mobile email for professionals. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone. It had no physical keyboard, ran on a standard web browser, and targeted consumers, not enterprises. Initial reviews were mixed. Business analysts questioned its battery life and security. The device cost $600 and required a 2-year AT&T contract. To BlackBerry's leadership, it didn't look like a threat. It looked like a different product category entirely. The iPhone's touchscreen keyboard became the focal point of internal debate at RIM. Lazaridis, an engineer by training, tested the device personally. According to documented interviews, he found the typing experience frustrating and slow. His conclusion, shared with his executive team, was that business users who sent hundreds of emails daily would never abandon physical keys for glass. The data supported him. Enterprise customers weren't asking for touchscreens. But beneath RIM's confidence, pressure was building in a place they weren't watching: the consumer market. The iPhone wasn't winning over CIOs or IT departments. It was winning over their employees. Workers who carried BlackBerries for work started buying iPhones for personal use. They discovered mobile web browsing, apps, and media that actually worked. The bring your own device movement hadn't yet been named, but it was already starting. In July 2008, Apple launched the App Store. Within a year, it hosted over 100,000 third-party applications. Developers flocked to iOS because Apple provided robust tools and revenue sharing. BlackBerry had its own app platform, but it was fragmented across device models and notoriously difficult to develop for. The gap wasn't just in apps, it was an ecosystem velocity. Apple was iterating faster than RIM could respond. By late 2008, RIM's leadership faced a strategic fork. Option 1, pivot hard toward touchscreens, rebuild the OS for apps and media, and compete directly with Apple in the consumer space. Option 2, double down on the enterprise fortress, improve the existing keyboard devices, and let Apple have the consumer market. Option 3, attempt both simultaneously, a hybrid strategy that would split resources and dilute focus. Each path had advocates inside the company. RIM chose Option 2 with a tactical nod to Option 3. Lazaridis and Balsillie decided to protect the enterprise core while experimenting with touchscreen devices on the side. They would not abandon the keyboard, they would not rebuild the operating system from scratch, and they would not chase the consumer market as a primary strategy. This decision was formalized in product roadmaps and resource allocation throughout 2008 and 2009. It was deliberate, not accidental. Why did this look rational? Because RIM's enterprise customers weren't leaving. Corporate contracts were multi-year and sticky. CIOs valued security and manageability over user experience. BlackBerry's profit margins in enterprise were healthy, over 20% on some device lines. Apple's iPhone, meanwhile, had no meaningful enterprise management tools in 2008. RIM's leadership believed they were playing a different game, one where they still held every advantage. Lazaridis also had a technical argument: battery life. The iPhone's touchscreen and full web browser drained power quickly. BlackBerry devices could last 2 days on a single charge because they were optimized for efficiency, not media consumption. For traveling executives in airports and meetings, this mattered. RIME's engineers believed that physics, not marketing, would determine the winner. They were solving the right problem, just for the wrong future. Initially, the decision seemed validated. In fiscal 2009, RIM reported revenue of $11 billion, up from $6 billion the prior year. Subscriber growth continued. The BlackBerry Bold and Curve lines sold well. Enterprise contracts renewed. Financial analysts remained bullish. The company's stock traded near all-time highs. By every metric RIM tracked, they were winning, but they were tracking the wrong metrics. RIM's first touchscreen response, the BlackBerry Storm, launched in November 2008. It featured a clickable touchscreen, a compromise between touch and physical feedback. Reviews were brutal. The device was slow, buggy, and the clicking mechanism felt gimmicky. Return rates hit unusually high levels. The storm revealed a deeper problem. RIM's operating system wasn't built for touch. Bolting a touchscreen onto a keyboard-centric OS produced a product that satisfied no one. The second-order consequence was cultural, not technical. Employees who use iPhones at home began pressuring IT departments to support them at work. This phenomenon, later called the consumerization of IT, inverted RIM's entire strategic assumption. The decision-maker was no longer the CIO, it was the end user. And end users didn't care about data compression or battery optimization. They cared about apps, screens, and experience. RIM had optimized for the wrong customer. Internally, the decision created friction. Engineers who wanted to build a modern touchscreen OS grew frustrated. Some left for Apple, Google, and startups. RIM's dual CEO structure made decisive pivots difficult. Lazaridis focused on engineering, Balsillie on business strategy, and neither had unilateral authority to kill the keyboard and start over. By 2010, according to former employees interviewed in retrospective accounts, the company knew it was behind, but couldn't agree on how to catch up. Apple didn't react to BlackBerry, it ignored it. By 2010, the iPhone 4 had launched with a Retina display, FaceTime, and over 300,000 apps. Google's Android platform, initially dismissed by RIM as fragmented, was gaining traction with manufacturers like Samsung and HTC. Both ecosystems were iterating quarterly. RIM's product cycle, built around 18-month hardware refreshes, couldn't keep pace. The velocity gap became unbridgeable. By 2011, the collapse was undeniable. RIM's U.S. market share fell below 20%. In 2012, it dropped to single digits. The company reported its first quarterly loss in years. Enterprises began migrating to mobile device management platforms that supported iOS and Android. The moat, RIM's proprietary network and security, had been commoditized. What had been a structural advantage became a legacy liability. The decision to protect the core had left them with nothing to protect. The decision killed BlackBerry, not immediately and not alone, but it set the trajectory. By choosing to defend the enterprise fortress rather than rebuild for a touch and app future, RIM missed the window to compete. The company eventually launched BlackBerry 10 in 2013, a competent touchscreen OS. But it arrived 4 years too late. Developers had moved on. Consumers had moved on. Enterprises had moved on. The decision in 2007 and 2008 determined the outcome in 2013. In 2013, RIM changed its name to BlackBerry Limited and replaced its co-CEOs. In 2016, the company stopped designing its own hardware entirely. It licensed the BlackBerry brand to TCL and later to Onward Mobility. The devices still exist, but they run Android. The company itself pivoted to software, security, endpoint management, and automotive operating systems. It survived, but as something completely different. The smartphone maker is gone. As of 2023, BlackBerry reported annual revenue of approximately $656 million, down from nearly $20 billion at its peak. The company is profitable but small. Its market capitalization is a fraction of what it once was. It no longer competes in consumer devices. The transformation from hardware giant to niche software vendor is complete. The company that once defined obisexual email is now a footnote in the smartphone era. Here's the paradox. RIM's decision wasn't irrational. Their enterprise customers genuinely preferred keyboards. Their profit margins were real. Their technical arguments about battery life and security were sound. The mistake was assuming that the customer who signed the contract would remain the decision maker. They optimized for the CIO when power was shifting to the end user. They solved yesterday's problem with precision, while tomorrow's problem went unaddressed. The deeper lesson is about operating systems and ecosystems. RIME treated the OS as infrastructure, a stable platform to support hardware. Apple and Google treated it as the product itself, iterated continuously, and opened it to developers. Once the ecosystem gap opened, no amount of hardware innovation could close it. BlackBerry's keyboards were excellent, but keyboards don't matter when the OS can't run the apps your users need. The decision to not rebuild the OS was the decision that mattered most. The shift from top-down IT procurement to bottom-up user preference is now standard in enterprise software. It's called consumerization, and it's why Slack beat email, Zoom beat Cisco, and Notion beat SharePoint. The pattern is consistent. When end users gain influence over purchasing decisions, user experience beats manageability. BlackBerry was the first major casualty of this shift. They were optimized for a world where users didn't choose their tools. That world ended in 2007. Strategy isn't just about making the right choice, it's about making it in the right window. RIM had the resources, talent, and market position to build a touchscreen OS in 2008. By 2010, the window was closing. By 2012, it was shut. The decision to wait, to protect the existing business while experimenting on the side, consumed the time they needed to catch up. In platform shifts, the cost of delay compounds exponentially. There is no such thing as fashionably late. RIM's leadership faced a brutal calculus: abandon a profitable, growing business to chase an uncertain future, or defend what was working and hope the threat passed. They chose defense. Most executives would have made the same choice with the same information. The lesson isn't that they were foolish, it's that defending the core often feels rational even when it's fatal. Sunk cost bias doesn't require irrationality. It just requires success that you're not ready to abandon. One structural factor: RIM's dual CEO model split authority at the worst possible moment. When a company needs to kill its core product and rebuild, it requires singular, decisive leadership. Lazaridis and Balsillie were both brilliant, but they had different priorities and no tiebreaker. According to retrospective analyses, this slowed decision-making during the critical 2008-2010 window. Governance structure matters most when the stakes are highest. RIM's board allowed a structure that prevented the very decisiveness the moment required. Could RIM have survived? Possibly. If they had committed to a full OS rebuild in 2008, launched a true touchscreen competitor by 2010, and accepted 2 years of declining profits to fund the transition, they might have held a position. It would have required killing the keyboard line entirely, alienating their existing base, and betting the company on an unproven platform. That's a decision almost no profitable CEO makes willingly, which is why market leaders so rarely survive platform shifts. One counterfactual: what if RIM had adopted Android? In 2009, Android was open, improving rapidly and desperate for hardware partners. RIM could have kept its keyboard hardware, its enterprise security software, and its brand, while outsourcing the OS to Google. Samsung pursued exactly this strategy and became the world's largest smartphone maker. RIM considered it, according to reports, but rejected it as ceding too much control. They wanted to own the entire stack. That decision too mattered. The decision that killed BlackBerry wasn't a blunder. It was a rational choice to defend a profitable core business instead of cannibalizing it for an uncertain future. The lesson is this: in a platform shift, the most dangerous position is market leadership. Incumbents have the most to lose, the strongest incentive to wait, and the least room for error. BlackBerry's mistake wasn't failing to see the iPhone coming. It was believing they could respond without abandoning what made them successful. Sometimes the right decision is the one that feels like surrender.